yes, to bring awareness to how the system of care works and what we're doing. But we also want to talk about how COVID has impacted our homeless services system. And as we prepare for the upcoming RFP or the NOFO, we want to make sure that we're considering COVID-19 and the impact that it's had and whether or not it's created any gaps in our system of care so that we can strategically allocate resources to fill those gaps. And so I'm going to advance and just start off kind of at 30,000 feet, talking about the Citizens Advisory Committee and who they are. And then we're going to move very quickly through this presentation so that Wendy can lay the foundation for our discussion today, and then we'll hear from our panelists. So Kiana, if you want to advance to the next slide, and we want to make sure that we're recording this session. So for those of you who are not familiar with the CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee, they are formed by the Board of County Commissioners through a resolution, and their role is really to oversee the health and human services system of care. And so they're made up of institutional leaders across various domains, whether it's housing, food, education, crime, safety, childcare, all of those domains, which you'll see here momentarily. And they're looking across those domains to make sure that our system of care is operating at maximum capacity. So we have what's called a health and human services element that's a part of the county's comp plan that guides the direction for services through community services and other county departments. And we have something called an indicator report, which is a document that we are revising now to kind of match what's going on in the community that gives us an indication of whether or not those system of cares are operating the way they should. So the next slide will kind of give you a snapshot of what the indicator report looks like. So Kiana, if you want to advance to the next slide, this will show you a summary. Now, we're utilizing this summary now just to look at whether there's access to care or child care and domestic violence, things of that nature. Homelessness, you'll see on the second row in the second column. But we are looking to revise this indicator report and to really begin to look at, each of the domains more comprehensively as we work with other funders to strategically allocate resources to fill any gaps that have been created. So the next slide, Kiana, if you want to go ahead and advance, will give you more of a snapshot of what I'm talking about. Here's what we like to refer to as an opportunity ecosystem. So as we look to align the health and human services element to what's actually happening in the community, we know that there are a number of funders or governmental entities or organizations, foundations that are leading like a collective impact role. They're basically coordinating across the entire county, looking at subpopulations, utilizing a database that's central, and making sure that they're working with other partners to strategically allocate resources across each of these domains. So if you look at housing and homelessness, I'm going to show you the governance structure of how that operates. But Community Services Department and the Homeless and Housing Alliance, they serve as the backbone entities for our homeless services system. Housing and Economic Sustainability, DHES, they serve as kind of the backbone entity for housing development, it's particularly when it comes to affordable and workforce housing and making sure that they're filling gaps and they're looking across the system comprehensively. So the idea here is to make sure that within each of these domains, whether it's housing, employment, transportation, that these backbone entities have a comprehensive plan that looks at the quality of services, whether they're accessible, whether the services are available, and there's accountability and coordination. But in addition to that, they're making sure that we're considering how we want to approach this work, whether we're looking at it through a racial equity lens, or we're looking at providing services through the least restrictive environment. We're keeping people at the center of our work, whether we're leveraging resources across sectors to find levers that will improve outcomes in multiple domains. So the CAC is really tasked with working with these backbone entities and making sure that our system of care is operating at a maximum capacity. So Kiana, if you want to advance to the next slide. And so this just gives you an idea of, and I put this together to try to frame, kind of how we're approaching the homeless services system. So we all are accountable to our county residents, right? And of course, the Board of County Commissioners, they are accountable and elected by the residents. But we understand that homelessness is not the county's problem. The county is not homelessness. The Homeless and Housing Alliance is the community, is kind of like the backbone entity that really works to solve this issue. And it's made up of a number of entities that are providing direct services to clients and making sure that we're coordinating services in the most efficient way possible. Now, the county does serve as the collaborative applicant. So being in this role allows us to draw down federal dollars, which is only a portion of the dollars. And it also allows us to use ad valorem dollars to kind of fill gaps. But it's really the Homeless and Housing Alliance that does the work. And the Citizens Advisory Committee, again, they're working across all of those domains that I just talked about to look at ways that we can work together effectively. Then you have the Homeless Advisory Board. These are more like the champions for homelessness. So if you not consider all of the domains, but just homelessness, the Homeless Advisory Board is made up of a number of leaders from various sectors. And their goal is to provide some oversight and to make sure that they're reporting to the Board of County Commissioners the progress on the homeless plan, Leading the Way Home. And so there's a member of the Homeless and Housing Alliance. The chair sits on the Homeless Advisory Board, and also the Homeless Coalition sits on the Homeless Advisory Board. The Homeless Coalition is an entity that just raises dollars. The easy way to think about it is they're the fundraisers. They're helping to fund the 10-year plan. But the Homeless and Housing Alliance, again, is where the work happens, and it's the center. So the county is really there to augment the work of the Alliance. So if you want to go to the next slide, Kiana, this will help lessen the confusion, I think, especially with the Homeless Advisory Board, the Homeless and Housing Alliance, and the Homeless Coalition particularly. So just some examples of how the Homeless Advisory Board works. Yes, they are there to oversee the progress of the 10-year plan and make sure that the board is aware, but they also are made of institutional leaders that allows us to look at policies across systems and determine how they can be aligned or leveraged to achieve better outcomes. So it would be the Homeless Advisory Board. They're like the champions. And so if things like you heard about the housing bond, hopefully we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about the housing bond here today. But, the Homeless Advisory Board, they would be the champions out there really trying to bring to bear any resources that are needed to address this issue. And there you see how the composition of that board is made up. It's led by County Commissioner Mac Bernard. So there's always a county commissioner that is the chair for the Homeless Advisory Board. But then you have representatives from the League of Cities, the VA, again, HHA, housing authorities, faith-based, the managing entity, law enforcement, the school district, DCF, the Economic Council has 3 seats to make sure that the businesses are included. So that just gives you an idea of sectors that we're engaging at a more of a leadership level to try to bring to bear any type of resources that are needed to address homelessness countywide. And then the HHA, they're the direct service providers. Now the HHA also has system partners on board. So it's important to have those partners so that you can coordinate healthcare and mental health and things of that nature. So they do have system partners, but they're closer to the work. They're actually getting the work done and coordinating strategically and utilizing the centralized database to make sure we know who's coming into the system, what services they're provided, what the outcomes are, what the return on the investment is, if we're keeping equity at the center. So a lot of coordination is going with the HHA. They're the engine of this whole operation. And then the Homeless Coalition is there to raise dollars, to engage businesses and make sure that they are giving and contributing to the advancement of Leading the Way Home, our homeless plan. And so as we look to, you'll hear about the HRC2 today. As we look to build the HRC2, we'd love to have a major donor that can put their name on the building. It's going to be the Homeless Coalition that will go out, promote this particular project, and bring in funds to help with the operations. And they're also there to help shift the narrative around homelessness, to make sure that people know that housing is a human right, and that many people are one check away from being homeless, and to break down the stereotypes and myths about people who are experiencing homelessness. So I hope that gives you some clarity about these three distinct entities and how they all work together to provide a system of care that's optimizing the way that it operates. Next slide. So now I have the pleasure of introducing someone who is no stranger to this community or to the homeless world. She is our subject matter expert when it comes to homelessness within this department. Wendy is a very passionate and a very knowledgeable individual in this space. We're extremely lucky to have her and to have all of the institutional knowledge that she holds in the nonprofit sector and with all the partners and relationships that she's developed across the county. I think it has been it's been a tremendous asset to our department as we look to shape our system of care in the way that will be most beneficial to the residents we serve. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Wendy and turn it over to her. And she's going to kind of lay the foundation for the next 10, 15 minutes. And then we're going to jump right in and start hearing from our panelists on some of the topics for today. So Wendy.
Thanks, James. And good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Next slide, Key. So in late 2019, the Homeless and Housing Alliance wrote the Leading the Way Home, Palm Beach County's Plan to End Homelessness, and it was approved by the HHA and the Board of County Commissioners in December of 2019. Within this plan, this replaced the 10 to End, or the 10-year plan to end homelessness. There are 6 goals, which include access to health and behavioral health care, expansion of support services across the systems, expanded community engagement and advocacy for homeless services and policies, increasing housing options for the homeless, aligning funding and investments to leverage additional resources, and finally to expand the services that are offered to our homeless neighbors through system collaboration. Next slide. I wanted to give you a snapshot of what homelessness looks like in our community. Every year we do a point in time count. It is a 24-hour count, started at noon, usually on a Thursday, and completed at noon on a Friday. As you can see, we've had an 8% increase in homelessness between 2019 and 2020. The chart beside it indicates special populations. What's important to note in this is the tremendous increase in the number of seniors that we saw on the street in that 24-hour period of time. We have been on the fence about having a pit in 2021, but HUD settled that, kicked us off the fence last Friday and said you will have a point in time count. So we are jockeying right now to set that point in time count up probably for the last Thursday and Friday in the month of January. And we need all the help that we can get. So this is also a plug for volunteers. Again, it's a 24-hour time count. You can work overnight, you can work during the day. It's worth noting that most often law enforcement accompanies us, especially in the night hours. But again, we need as many people as we can get to help us complete this count successfully. Next slide. I wanted to share with you the affordable housing production between 2018 and 2020 from the Department of Housing and Economic Sustainability and its partners. So over on that side of the shop, they're responsible for construction, acquisition, rehab, and foreclosure prevention. What's important to note here is the 0 to 50% of AMI, which is AMI at this number. The top number would be $43,900. 808 units have been produced or rehabbed. Very, very rarely is foreclosure prevention in this number, but rehab, acquisition, and construction are for folks that are earning 0 to 50%. Next slide. It's worth noting we're still about 2,500 units short, even with those kind of numbers coming out. So as many of you will recall from the news, John Prince Park became a tent city in the spring of 2020. It grew to about 175 tents and more than 200 people very quickly. In an effort to curb the spread of COVID in the encampment, the HOT team, in conjunction with many partners, including PBSO, the Lord's Place, South County Mental Health, Fire Rescue, Rebel Recovery, Parks and Recreation, just to name a few, helped move all of these folks out of John Prince Park into more appropriate settings, such as diverting them out of the park to family and friends, placing them in hotels, moving them into permanent housing, and moving them into local shelters and programs. So the picture on the left shows John Prince Park in June of 2025, June 25th of 2020, and the one on the right shows what it looks like today. So a lot of folks ask, where did those folks go? Next slide. A lot of those folks went to the Lewis Center Annex located at the fairgrounds. As a part of the COVID response, the county rehabbed and opened the Lewis Center Annex in July of 2020. This project was a tremendous undertaking, and it took the entire community, as indicated by all of the partners listed on this slide, to make this facility operational in a short 8-week period of time. To date, this program has served over 200 homeless individuals. Next slide. This is a bed count of Palm Beach County in the homeless system. You can see that we've spread it over 3 years, 2018 to 2020. I think there's probably a lot of folks on the call that want to know what these categories are. So ES is emergency shelter, and that means staying in a place for 90 days or less. Permanent housing means permanent housing without supportive deep end services. That's PS. PSH is permanent supportive housing, which includes deep end services, and the individual and or family must have a disability. Transitional housing is TH, or sometimes called supportive housing. It's time limited up to 24 months, and rapid rehousing, which is RRH, is permanent housing that uses a decreasing rental subsidy model. It's worth noting that since 2018, we have had a 35% increase in the number of beds available for the homeless. Next slide. Continuing in the vein to offer housing for homeless folks, these are renderings of 2 upcoming facilities. So many of you know where the old tax collector site was on Military Trail between Lake Worth Road and 10th Avenue. The West Palm Beach Housing Authority will be building the homes that you see, the 2-story facilities that you'll see at the top of the screen. That will offer 17 2- and 3-bedroom homes to families for a transitional housing model of up to 24 months. On the bottom, you'll see the Homeless Resource Center 2, which is located in Lake Worth, behind the Senior Center in Lake Worth on Lake Worth Road, between Kirk and Congress. This facility will open just about the same time, and it will provide an additional 78 beds of emergency shelter for singles, youth, couples, which is something that we don't have, and seniors. Families will continue to access housing through coordinated entry and the rapid rehousing model that is currently being implemented in our community. Next slide. This is a rendering of the Pahokee HRC3 site. This facility will offer 18 units of emergency shelter and COVID isolation sheltering, as well as 22 units of supportive housing for up to 24 months to individuals, youth, seniors, and families. This facility is scheduled to open in December of 2020, and the intake for this facility will be done in Belle Glade at an old South County Mental Health, not South County, Jerome Golden intake facility located in Belle Glade, which also has 6 beds. Next slide. One thing that I think falls off our radar quite often in the homeless world and really across the spectrum is the number of units that we continue to lose out of affordability. What does that mean? So what that means is these are units that have had some kind of tax credit placed on them, and with the stipulation that they remain affordable. Once that time frame is met, which could be 15 years, it could be 30 years, it could be 50 years, those rents have the option to go market rate. So within the next 5 years, there are almost 1,000 units that will be coming out of affordability that are all low-income units. They're listed here, and you can see on the category that many of these are elderly housing. So as we move forward in the housing world, we need to not only plan for the number of homeless that continue to be in our community, but we also need to plan for the potential displacement of 1,000 people or households that can no longer afford to live in their units. For instance, you will see, on this slide, St. Andrew's residence on Burn Street in West Palm Beach. That is a waterfront residence. I would just about bet my entire paycheck that this will not remain affordable. So we need to keep an eye on that. Next slide. I wanted to show folks just kind of a 30,000 foot view of how COVID has impacted our world. So we know in Palm Beach County that almost 23%, what I found most stunning in this slide is that in August, 23% of our labor force had filed for unemployment. And the top 3 professions, which we know we're a service industry county, we know that our folks, often our homeless folks or our recently housed folks, often work in these 3 areas. Next slide. So in response to COVID, the federal government put out the CARES Act, and there's been several versions of it, but this is the Treasury money. So Palm Beach County was a recipient of a fairly large influx of CARES money to allow us to manage the pandemic the best that we can. Our department was fortunate to receive rental and utility assistance in the amount of about $20 million. An additional $6.5 million was allocated for food. So as of, I believe this was yesterday or the day before, this is how much has been paid out. You can see we've assisted in the rental and utility payments, 7,100 households for almost $12 million. There is another 1,500 households that are in the queue for payment that are being processed as we speak. And then another almost 2,000 that have been returned for additional documentation, such as proof of COVID, a landlord, a balance statement. There's a variety of reasons. Legal Aid and Florida Rural Legal Services are doing a pilot program, which is a mediation program designed to keep evictions from actually going through. So they mediate with the tenant and the landlord to stop that eviction. What we do know is, as of yesterday, there are still 1,115 evictions pending in the courts, with 1,017 of them being filed after October 1st. So we're aware that we have a storm coming after the end of the CDC's moratorium, which is December 31st. Food has, as you can see, we are probably going to spend over the allocation. If James and Truno allow that, we are going to spend over the allocation in food. You can see how many households have accessed food cards during the COVID crisis. Next slide. So now I've talked all I have to talk today and set the groundwork for these experts. Everyone on this picture, I'm proud to call a colleague and a friend, and have worked many, many years with them. Have the utmost respect for every one of them on the phone or on this webinar. First, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Mac Bernard from District 7. And Matthew Constantine is the CEO of Adopt a Family. Jennifer, I'm going to massacre your last name, Farrell. It's the best I can do. City of West Palm Beach, and she serves as the Director of Housing and Community Development. Kat Hammer, otherwise known as Kathy, Assistant Vice President for Homeless and Residential Services for Goodwill. Diana Stanley, CEO of the Lord's Place. And Uwe Nyack from Homeless and Housing Alliance Board President. Welcome all. Thank you for joining today. And James will pick it up from here. James?
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I know Commissioner Bernard is planning to join us later. He did text me, so he's just trying to pull away. We have about 100 and over 130 people on the call, so we have staff standing by to make him a panelist once he joins us. But, you know, we are excited about the panelists that we have because, you know, I would consider many of the entities on this panel to be a pillar within the community as it relates to housing and homelessness. And of course, we have so many other system partners, and I don't want to, for any, by any stretch, neglect or make it seem as if the services and the partnerships that we have with our other partners are less valuable. We work as a team here in Palm Beach County. I just want to make sure that you have the opportunity to hear from some experts, particularly as it pertains to various subpopulations of homelessness that we'll be kind of honing in to here today. And so Wendy kind of gave the 30,000 foot view of or contextual view of what we're dealing with in terms of housing, the housing crisis, what our overall homeless count is, and how we're looking to respond using some of the pots of dollars that we have here available now. Now we're going to kind of hone into each of the panelists and their roles, working with specific populations or working across a municipality, and hear from them on a variety of issues. And then we'll circle back around after we've had our first round of questionings with them, and we'll ask them specifically about COVID. Like, what are they seeing the impact of COVID? What do they see that it has had on homelessness? And if there are gaps that they have noticed, then we want to be able to record that information and then hear from our audience from their perspective in terms of gaps. And then we're going to utilize this information to prepare for our upcoming RFP or NOFO that will take place in the first quarter of next year. So this is our way of really going back out to the community. We have a comprehensive plan. We know what our strategies are, but we also have not dealt with COVID and its impact. So we want to hear from you today so that we can prepare and shape our NOFO in a few months. So I'm going to actually, we're going to go ahead and advance and start with Uwe because, Diana. We're going to start with Diana. Diana needs no introduction in the Palm Beach County community. She does tremendous work on a whole lot of other fronts. But particularly what I want to hear today is about some of the work, one that you're doing with the PATH team. I think that's an evidence-based, very innovative strategy and approach to homelessness. So we really want to hear about that work and your work around reentry. And then I have another question for you because, we know that it's costing us $35,000 to $40,000 a year just to leave a chronically homeless individual on the streets. When it comes to criminal justice system, their interface with the healthcare system, all these systems, it's a tremendous amount of money. And we know that housing is healthcare. So we got to figure out a way to really engage our hospitals and our healthcare entities. So I want to hear from you in terms of what some strategies might be to really bring them to the table and engage them and help them to achieve better health outcomes and to save money. What are some tips that you can give us with that as well?
Thanks, James. And thanks, everybody, for giving me the opportunity to be part of this distinguished panel, all my colleagues that I love so much. So, you know what? I think when we talk about homelessness, James, one of the things we really need to discuss is how do we prevent someone from going into the system? And when you are starting to talk about reentry work, formerly incarcerated individuals, for us, it's about putting a program in place that allows somebody to not enter the homeless system. Gosh, it's been 10 years now that the Lord's Place got involved in reentry services, and we are committed to this population. It's definitely a prevention measure that we use. So here's some interesting stats I wanted to share with the group today. There is, for formerly incarcerated people are 10 times more likely to be homeless than the general public, 10 times more homeless. So if we are not serving that population when they come out of jail and prison, they're going to end up in our homeless system. What's even more disheartening, I believe, is that the rate is even higher. Are you ready, folks? For women, minorities, and those who have multiple episodes of incarceration. So we are really recognizing the fact that in order for us to serve individuals that were formerly incarcerated, we need to not let them into the homeless system. And one of the things I'm really proud about with Palm Beach County is the following. We have an amazing reentry program through the county, through our public safety department. The Lord's Place has been part of that. The reentry task force, which is made up of, I think 40 or 50 people. And we are connecting the dots. And I'm so proud of this initiative because what this initiative does, it allows us to serve formerly incarcerated or returning citizens once they get out so that they don't end up having to go through the Lewis Center or the annex. We can stop that from happening. And so as long as we continue to keep true to that system, we're not going to have to see two systems collide. So reentry is an important piece. I oftentimes call it it's the intersection, right? Those that are homeless have become incarcerated often, and those that are incarcerated oftentimes become homeless. And it's our responsibility as a community to keep those two systems very separate. Now, that being said, one of the things that we learned at the Lord's Place with our reentry services is the fact that we believe that when someone enters into our world, it doesn't matter where they've come from. We don't define somebody in their past, right? So we may have targeted programs and services for someone who was formerly incarcerated versus somebody who was chronically homeless. But overall, similar tools are given to them, maybe different times of their journey, but the tools are the same so that we can embark upon a journey for them that gives them self-sufficiency. So I think that's really important for us to acknowledge also. Some other things, talking about equity, and I know this is a really big, important issue right now in our community. The Institute came out, National Resource Center on Justice came out and said, mass incarceration has accounted for a 65% increase in Black-white inequality in child homelessness. So what does that mean? Not only are African-American parents, especially fathers, more likely to be incarcerated, but their children are also more likely than white children to become homeless as part of a parental incarceration. It's a really interesting connection there, right? And I have such a heart for the child that's left behind of a parent that ends up going into jail. We tend to forget about that. And when I read that and realized that that incarceration almost doubles that child's risk of becoming homeless, if that doesn't make us stand up and take notice, that the need for us to really look at that, and then to really think of it that this is about minorities, Black children, and how do we best serve them. So I think that was really interesting. And I think you're going to start seeing that trend more and more. Now I want to step back for a moment and just share with everybody that here's my hope. My hope and prayer is this. About 8-9 years ago, Wendy and the team remembers, years ago with HUD, we had the veterans and then we had HUD, right? And we would all go to the conferences and would say, okay, who's going to take care of the veterans? And HUD would point to the Department of VA, and the VA would point to HUD and say, okay, you guys are in charge. By the grace of God and lots of advocacy work, we ended up getting the BASH programs. You guys remember, they finally started to talk, right? So we've been having a lot of advocacy about the same thing with the Department of Justice and HUD. And the need for the two of them to start having systemic conversations, right? It shouldn't be that when somebody is released from incarceration, they're automatically homeless, and we all sit around and we say, well, who's responsible for that person? And DOJ says, HUD's responsible. And HUD says, nope, DOJ's responsible. But in honesty, we all know everybody's responsible, right? We are all responsible. Donors are responsible. Government's responsible. Individuals are responsible. So I think that's an important advocacy piece that we need to continue to have moving forward, is how do we take those two systems and merge them and marry them so that our folks coming out of prison and jail are not homeless on the streets and that we're able to serve them. So that's kind of just a brief update on that piece. I want to talk a little bit about some of the statistics from TLP, if I can, from the Lord's Place. Out of the adults served in our reentry program last year, approximately 40% came to us homeless. So they had been incarcerated, were released, and ended up becoming homeless. And so our goal in our reentry program is to not allow that to happen. And so we continue to work with all of our providers to make that happen. Also, on an average, over the last 4 years, we're really proud to say this, 2.75 of our clients have left our housing programs because of reincarceration, because of recidivism. So what's the takeaway here? Housing, and James, you nailed it, right? Housing's the key to everything. Housing's the key for reentry. Housing's the key for healthcare. It is critical that if we don't have housing, all of the other systems are going to break down and they're going to be infiltrated. And that's the same thing with our hospitals and our emergency rooms and everything. So reentry in our book, we prove it over and over again. You house somebody, the lack of recidivism is going to be less. So there you have it. Any questions from you, James? Or I know we're going to wait to the very end, right?
Yes.
Great.
Yes. So, and there are a couple of great nuggets that you threw in there that, you know, one, starting with reentry and some of the work that you do, I've seen some of the recidivism data. And when you look at programs across the county, reentry programs, we see that the most effective programs are those that offer things like housing, obviously, and employment. And so when you look at your reentry program and look at some of the other providers, you see that that they're not returning back into the system at a higher rate than those programs that don't have those basic supports. And so that's a really important thing to note. It's not.
And the other thing is, and the other thing, James, that I didn't share that's important as you talk about that is the cost. So let's talk about return on investment. I think this is so important. So at the Lord's Place, it costs about $11,000 a year for someone to stay at one of our facilities, one of our campuses. If an individual was to stay in the county jail, it cost $48,910 a year. So the question becomes for this community panel, where do we invest the money? So we already know from the housing world, it is less expensive to house someone than to keep them on the streets. So what I'm here to tell you, the same applies for reentry and for returning citizens. If we house them, the return on investment is going to be better than keeping them in jail. Absolutely. And we're stewards of the taxpayer dollars, and for those who are giving to us to help address this issue, they want to know that we're being strategic about how we're investing those dollars. And certainly that is a great investment. There are a couple of other things that I would note is you mentioned the veterans, and we're fortunate now. There was some legislation pushed to DC about the challenges that the VA experienced and being able to manage veterans who were in need of housing, and they pushed and made some tweaks to that. And now we're starting to see, for instance, the Housing Authority just received some VASH vouchers. They were originally just going to the West Palm Beach Housing Authority, but now Palm Beach County Housing Authority has some, and some other housing authorities. And so now that is opening up a little bit more, and we're really excited about that because we want to make sure that we're taking care of our veterans. And the third thing that I would mention, which really segues to our next presenter, which is Uwe. So Ken, if you want to advance this particular slide, is around racial equity. So I was extremely excited to hear that the Homeless and Housing Alliance was taking on racial equity. We've already begun to look at the racial equity within the continuum of care, and the numbers are absolutely staggering. We're talking about 90% of our homeless families in the point in time count were Black families. 90%. That is a tremendous number. And we see the disparities even with those who are in our homeless service system, and youth, Black youth and LGBTQ make up the vast majority, almost 100% of those who are homeless. And so it's important for us to look at that number and say, what is going on? And then to be strategic in our approach to addressing it, right? And we know that we're going to need to work with other system partners to get this done. And that's exactly what our Homeless and Housing Alliance does, and what they're setting out to do with this racial equity core team. So I just want to have Uwe, who is the chair of the HHA, and he also is representing someone who's formerly homeless. He's a voice, a great success story, and truly an inspirational individual. Just to take a moment to talk a little bit about HHA, what it is, and just share some information about how the HHA is structured. Uwe?
All right, good afternoon, everybody. The Homeless and Housing Alliance is a collaborative, inclusive, community-based process and approach to planning and managing homeless assistance resources and programs effectively and efficiently to end homelessness in our county. The HHA membership is non-sectarian and non-partisan. All interested citizens, homeless and formerly homeless people, nonprofit organizations, law enforcement, businesses, the faith-based community, governmental and educational entities, or civic groups operating in Palm Beach County can join us and are eligible for membership in our organization. Our monthly meetings are open to the public. We have 19 seats, as you can see from the slide there. And our membership, I'm proud to report, besides all these people here and my colleagues here on this wonderful panel, we have a total of over 60 agencies counting as members of our organization. We are mainly tasked with approving funding priorities for the continuum of care and for state emergency shelter grant funding recommendations. The biggest thing to me personally was really, since I'm with the HHA, that we were responsible for helping to create and approve Leading the Way Home, a plan which restructured the HHA into 6 pillars with an overarching goal of HMIS and data, which is emphasized throughout all of our work. Those 6 pillars include and reflect each of the goals of the HHA. They are equity, healthcare, permanent housing, support services, systems, and engagement and advocacy. We have, as a result, restructured our board and added 5 new seats, including 3 for youths aged 18 to 24. We have added a seat for an individual, and finally a seat for a family member who all have experience as what we call lived experience, have been formerly homeless. Due to the, unfortunately, we all hit the roadblock, as you all know, the COVID pandemic came in between at the beginning of the year when we were ready to tackle Leading the Way Home, and that has put us temporarily on hold. The whole county was on hold. We were able to resume our activities and meetings finally at the end of July, and are doing so with the help of Zoom calls. The situation has forced us to reduce the number of pillars to temporarily reduce them to a smaller number. And we decided to focus specifically on HMIS and data, which deals with coordinated entry and prioritization, on systems, which focuses on coordinated entry and prioritization, and finally on equity, which focuses on racial disparities within the homeless system and developing an equity lens in which we look at all processes and systems. Like James mentioned to you already, when you look at the dashboard of this racial disparity dashboard, you find very disturbing numbers. 90% of the population, homeless population, are Afro-Americans. With the youths, it's even worse. It's more than the 90%. So that's very disturbing, and we want to do something, and we want to tackle the problem. As such, we have established 2 subcommittees, and they are meeting regularly now. And as a result, so far, they found that adding more facilities throughout the county, including the Belle Glades created also the need for a bigger discussion around coordinated entry and how communications needs to flow. And in a response, HMIS was folded into the coordinated entry pillar and will be the driver for that pillar. The second thing was the racial equity. We created a framework around it, and that was necessary after reviewing the racial equity dashboard and the numbers there, and recognizing the disparity throughout our homeless system. As a result, we have identified that there is a need to improve the agency and community education regarding racial equity. There's a lot of work to be done there. And we also want to create measures of accountability to improve racial equity as focal points. As our work continues, we will provide solutions to these problem areas and assist with their implementation. And that pretty much rounds it up what I wanted to let everybody know.
Thank you, Uwe, and thank you for your tremendous service. And you've been a huge asset to us as we navigate this homeless services system. Not just your work at the donation center and organizing that, but also, the passion and the knowledge that you bring just to homelessness and the humanity that you bring to this work. So thank you for your service. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, James.
In the line of what Uwe was saying around our youth homelessness, we're going to talk a little bit about how we are addressing family homelessness. I know that one of our HAB board members, who is a school board member as well, Erica Whitfield, was on. I don't know if she's still on. And also, I think Taylor is on. She's also a HAB board member. And if there are others, Elisa was on a little earlier. If there are others, thank you for your service. But one of the things that we've looked to do is to really engage the school district in a more strategic way. And so just recently, we crossed one milestone, which is being able to work with the district and getting them access to HMIS, to our homeless management information system, so that we can begin to look at McKinney-Vento, homeless youth, the difference, for those of you who are not familiar, the homeless youth that are counted within the school district, they're counted if they're couch surfing, as well as maybe sleeping in a hotel or sleeping in a car or sleeping outside. And so for us, in terms of from the federal government's standpoint, or from our continuum's definition of homelessness perspective, we separate the two by two things. One, if someone is in a hotel and they're paying on their own, then we wouldn't necessarily count them within our point in time count. We count those who are couch surfing, or we count those who are living in a hotel and paying on their own in our prevention number. So we still provide services to them, but we're trying to prevent them from being unsheltered and on the street. When we go out and do our point in time count, if we're paying for them to be in a hotel, or if we're paying for them to live in a shelter, or if we count those individuals who are living in their cars or under a bridge or in a park or anywhere that's uninhabitable, those are individuals that that you saw reflected in the point in time count numbers that Wendy shared with you earlier. And so those are two distinctive ways that we look at our homeless services system, and Matt works with both. And so I want to just talk about, have Matt Constantine, who is really our family homelessness guru. Adopt a Family is really the lead entity that works with families who are struggling. So I just want Matt to maybe talk a little bit about their partnership with the school district, and then to share a little bit about the youth homelessness demonstration grant and their role in that the new funding that was added to our continuum to address homelessness with youth ages 18, I believe, to 24. So Matt.
Thank you, James, and thank you everyone who's on the panel. It's kind of an honor to be here with all of you guys. You guys have been partners with us for many, many years. It's okay, I'm going to kind of flip it and talk a little bit about, because James, Wendy, I mean, virtually everyone has talked about systems. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Youth Homeless Demonstration Grant. It was really cool to see this happen live over the last 4 or 5 years. And, it was a huge group effort, but to watch, sometimes the word system to me can get a little bit ethereal and buzzwordy, and watching what happened through the youth process, it was really cool to see serious changes take place, collaborations take place, and a real infrastructure get built. So really quick, some history. In 2017, Palm Beach County was one of just a few communities in the country to in a 100-day challenge. During that challenge, the goal was to house as many unaccompanied homeless youth and parenting youth, 24 and younger. And our community did a great job. And through that, it was a really cool way to sort of positively force a lot of discussion among providers that, though, worked together, it wasn't at that level of intensity that this required, that this grant required. We did a great job as a community, and some really cool things came out of that just did not exist. And, we developed a youth by name list. Goodwill and the Lewis Center, HHA, dedicated some of the beds for homeless youth. We launched rapid rehousing programs, specifically targeting young parenting moms who are 18 to 24, who needed longer assistance and needed a different level of case management. Created the youth advisory board, so we made sure that voice, and to this day, that voice helps guide our policies and procedures and how we operate our youth homeless programs. Vita Nova opened up, a drop-in center that has really become a great referral source, and everyone is together, and it's a ton of partners that came together. But I think about that because that's what it really took a village to make this happen, and it's still happening. But through Palm Beach County Youth Services, just so many providers have come together to make that work. So in 2019, we were notified that Palm Beach County is notified that we received a very competitive youth demonstration grant, over $4 million. And what this means for our community is just a lot more services for unaccompanied youth, vulnerable populations, young parenting moms who have no place to go. And so, that money is here. It has started, and I think we're going to see some really good numbers, similar to, like Diana mentioned, the BASH, and we saw the impact, and we see it in the point in time counts of what our community's been able to do for veteran homelessness in our community. We're going to see that, I think, with youth homelessness in the next year or two. We're going to see us making a dent in that issue, but more importantly, making it really clear to our community that there are services there here for them, that there are solutions, and the word is out, and I'm just proud to be a part of that amazing group. And so, one of the things that we also work with too with the youth is the case management. It's a very different style of case management. It's much more intensive. We focus a lot on key life skills. We teach on how to call your landlord to say that something's wrong. We work on budgeting, how to fill out a job application, what to wear. And it's, where in some cases you may be meeting with a family once or twice a month. In this situation, we're talking and meeting with families once or twice a week, sometimes more frequently. Really trying to make an impact and help our youngest, most vulnerable folks, begin to make that climb out of where they are. And just to kind of pivot, James mentioned sort of the schoolwork, and I think sometimes when we talk about homelessness and family homelessness, and I was true for adoptive family for many years, and I think for the community at large, the number one focus has always been housing. And almost get tunnel vision to say we must build more housing, we must provide more housing. And one of the things that I know I personally am guilty of is not paying the attention that it deserves to those social determinants of health that have already been mentioned. And when you look at those social determinants of health, there's one foundation sort of principle in there, and I think it's housing. I think without the stable housing, your healthcare, your community, your organization, your kids' school performance is in jeopardy. And it's, I think, the backbone of that whole model of the social determinants of health. So, a story from our perspective, and, with Erica being on, she's been a part of this, but in a micro cosm of what we've been able to do, we've had an incredible relationship with the school district, Palm Beach County, for many, many years. Their McKinney-Vento team is almost a part of our family, and we worked very closely together. But in around 2015, we had an opportunity to purchase some land near our campus And a donor stepped up and said, do it. And for the next couple of years, we did a needs assessment. And we knew that affordable housing was the need. Like, we just knew that. But in those conversations, we started talking a lot with our sort of what we call our sister school, which is just 2 blocks north, is Highland Elementary. And Highland Elementary is one of those schools James just described. A lot of the kids that go there, they're in the hotels on Dixie Highway. They're moving to a relative's house, then to C Street, then back to a hotel. And we started to have a lot of conversations with the principal, with their staff. And we did a lot of research, and we found a model in Tacoma, Washington called McCarver Elementary, where a school, in essence, partners with a housing provider. And the housing provider says, these units are for you, for families. You identify those high-need families, and we will house them. And the overarching goal of this is clear. I mean, if we can provide the stable housing, we think, and we kind of know, that we will improve the child's academic performance. And what happens when a child moves? We sometimes, in the day-to-day, because of the work we do, we think, oh, this family's in shelter, then they're going here. And our end goal, again, so many times is focused on permanent housing. But just thinking about those moves and thinking about what it does to those kids who have to change schools or, displaced, lost their friends, really looking through the lens of housing stability has been really important for us. So we embarked on building 14 units of housing and a community center. We developed a program committee. Erica was on that committee. Beth with the school district, the principal from Highland, our city commissioner, other experts were on this committee. Met for probably a year and a half, working through what this could look like, what that referral process would be. How do we prioritize those, 14 units, a lot for us, but in the big scheme of things, we need more. We always need more. And how do we make this a seamless referral process? And come out of that is happy to report a finished product. We have opened up, we've actually started housing families from Highland. We have 4 families in with, I think, 5 and 6 in the works. We talk with the staff at Highland Elementary on a weekly basis. The first family that moved in had been on Highland Elementary's radar for about 2 or 3 years. And it's just that family, a single dad, worked at fast food restaurants, busted his butt, would burn out family members and friends, would then stay in a hotel for a little bit, and then would run out of money, and then would go back to family and friends. And he did for a full, at least 1 year. And everyone at the school knew that this was the family they wanted to get into our program. So he moved in, and it was a really emotional day. He moved in a couple months ago, and now his kids have a place to do homework. It's the same place. They get homework every night. And we're working with him to also help him, to overcome some underemployment. And we have the opportunity with an after-school program here to provide extended academic tutoring to the kids. So we're really excited. And I think that partnership, I think there's room in a lot of different schools. I think, that it's some schools that are in the top 10 or top 20 for McKinney-Vento in our community, that we as providers could look at those as opportunities to provide partnerships with those schools, to provide housing for those families that attend. Because, by the way, if you do this on a big enough scale, not only do you transform those families, but you transform the school. So the school then becomes a very stable place. And students are in the classroom in September, and they're still in the same classroom in May, which some of the schools struggle with. So we're really excited and really grateful for the community effort that it took to get this on board. And I think that's kind of it, James. I don't know if you have any questions.
No, I think you said it perfectly, and it's a great example of, again, how housing can help improve outcomes in multiple domains, whether that's education, whether that's healthcare. Housing is a lever that we should all be focused on using. And so we really thank you for the work that you've done for the families in your area. And we do believe that that is a great model that can be used and brought to scale after it's been fully implemented. And, you know, one of the important facts or distinctions that I want to bring out as well is that homelessness is not just Adopt a Family or the Laura's Place or Goodwill or the other service providers' problem. It's our community's problem. And so there are opportunities for others to get involved as well, especially our faith-based community. One of the things that we did last year, or year before last, is really we began to map homelessness within the school district particularly. And we went out and we engaged well over 100 faith-based entities and one, helping them to understand this challenge that we're facing, and two, to see if we can get them strategically involved with homelessness, to expand like the family promise model. I know we have Taylor on the line. I don't know if we have our South County representatives here, but not just to expand the family promise model where their churches are actually opening up and allowing homeless families particularly to stay for a period of time while they help them to get on their feet, but also to engage in a number of support services. And more importantly, and one that the newly formed Faith in Action Palm Beach County has been focusing on is advocacy. How do they use their voices and their congregation's voice to shape narrative about individuals who are living in, who are experiencing homelessness, and to shape policy and to influence those elected officials to really think about how they're legislating and allocating resources. And so that has been a very successful effort thus far. And we want to see other entities, especially our faith-based community, to really step up and to continue to support this work. So, you know, just another segue into the discussion about another population, which are our seniors. Kim, if you want to advance the next slide, we're going to jump right into what's happening. Many of you may have seen some articles in the paper and recently in the news about the 43% increase in the number of seniors who were unsheltered in this past homeless point in time count. So we saw a dramatic increase in senior homelessness, and Wendy gave you some context in terms of what's happening around that with housing credits expiring. But we've also seen a number of other things happening. We've been at the center of complexes being condemned. And all of a sudden, especially in the Western Palm Beach County area, you know, you have 80 families, many of them seniors, are people with disabilities just being displaced. We're seeing senior facilities, go through fires and all types of things. We've seen hurricanes happen and having, individuals from the Bahamas and others, really pouring into our homeless system, and it's a very challenging thing that we've been facing. And all of this occurred within the past year, along with the pandemic. And so, we've been through a lot with this community, and we have continued to persevere, and I think we're doing a great job. And one of the things that we've done in response to some of those challenges that I've mentioned is utilize the FAA dollars to fund Goodwill and Jewish Family Services. I know Danielle is on as well, to help address senior homelessness. And so I'm going to introduce Kat, who's representing Goodwill today, to not just talk about senior homelessness and what they're seeing in terms of those who are coming into shelters, but also to share some information about the Senior Homelessness Initiative. It's a small initiative, how that's going, and some things that we should be looking to do to tweak and to make that better. So, Kat?
Hey, James, thank you so much. And the funny thing is, I was like, why do I have the unhappy trend and no celebratory stuff today? I'm like, are you trying to be mean to me? But I said, no, he's not. So before I even get started, I think it's really important to mention that, Thanksgiving's next week, and this has been one of the roughest years in I don't know how long, right? I mean, for all of us, humanity. And, and when I come out of it and I'm in this place about reviewing and thinking about my time in this community, and it's not even been 5 years, it'll be 5 years in February. And what I think is really significant in this period of time is I've watched us move from talking about collaboration and collective to actually making that happen. There was a lot of wordsmithing, a lot of talking about that, but it's actually happening. And I think that 100-day challenge that Matt mentions was part of that. So I feel like my responsibility is to briefly acknowledge how many agencies have worked and partnered around the last few years. And I think it's significant because as I move into discussing this trend is serious, this trend is scary, this trend is frightening. So I need to say thank you all, because we need to maximize our collective efforts and focus not on the benefit of a singular agency or movement or county or government, and focus on the collective energies to help homeless people experiencing homelessness in our community. That takes all of us. And so let me just do a shout out. Jennifer, apologies to everyone on your thing. Jennifer, I saw you somewhere, you disappeared your face, but I got to give a special shout out to West Palm Beach, who has really been very inclusive and really helped people understand the Lewis Center is part of Gulfstream Goodwill. Not that that's important, because we're just one piece. But they also have really taught me so much about collaboration. And so I'm going to give a big shout out to Lisa Kemp, who is this powerhouse behind the scenes that knows the importance of maximizing our dollars and maximizing our energies. But now here goes a really fast shout out, and everyone knows I can talk fast. Salvation Army, Silo, Vita Nova, Palm Beach School District. The Housing Authority has stepped up. We've got more vouchers in this last year and a half than we've ever seen. There's some miraculous things happening. The agency area on the aging, ChildNet, AVDA, YWCA, the Lord's Place, the Sheriff's Office, West Palm Beach Department, Adopt a Family, yo, my first friends in the work, because I didn't know what I was doing, but thank you. So I'm going to stop talking and let's talk about this series. Oh, lastly, and thank you to the Homeless Coalition for the funding that provides unrestricted dollars and resources to every agency member of the HHA. That's why they're important. They're not about an agency. They're not about the government. They're about ensuring we raise dollars that are unrestricted for the rest of us. So thank you. Now moving on to sadness, people. But we're going to stay hopeful because we got an amazing energy going on. But I want you to think about these numbers really. 10,000 people a day turn 65. 10,000 people a day. Now, in our homeless world, aging's tough. But if you've been on the street long, and even if you go on the street, let's say you're a healthy 55-year-old, or if I went on the street today, my health would decline dramatically. So a homeless person is considered geriatric at 50. In 2019, they did all these health affairs studying. For the first time, a third and half the shelter residents entering shelter for the first time are doing it this is it. They're not chronic, they're not coming back. This is going to continue, these trends, if we don't stop it. 2030, if you look at $460 million, this is just talking about senior people, folks. The cost of shelter, hospital, and nursing home services will increase to $460 million annually. Now, prior to COVID, it was anticipated that in 10 years, 100,000 seniors would be homeless on the street. Well, that was about 2 years ago, and now we've had a first year of COVID, and we've had some real financial hits. And I anticipate, when you see the next slide, that we're going to see this continue to grow. Now, they've done these national studies in New York and Los Angeles and Palm Beach and Boston, and we are just right with them. And unfortunately, Kiana or whoever's doing the slides, please bring me to the sad slide, please. So when I did these numbers, I decided to play around with it. I didn't even look at people 50 and over, but if you see this trend, I hope everyone's looking. We've gone from 3% of serving people 60 and over to 20% of all of our admissions in 2020, when we had fewer admissions because of COVID. Even though we opened another shelter, it was dedicated to a particular population. 20% of our admissions have been people over 60. Now, if you scroll over to the right, 37% of our admissions for people over the age of 55. Now, when we think about these things, this is a much more complicated issue. Yes, and James, you're right. Ruth and Norman Rails, how can I forget my partner? Oh God, Danielle, don't kill me, Danielle. If I saw your face, I'm sure you're like, what about us? I'm sorry. We collaborated and actually did a senior prevention application together, and we are serving people with prevention dollars, seniors and over, but it is a drop in the bucket. And if you look at what these numbers suggest, we are in for some serious obstacles. And if you think about this population, 55 and older, you've got to think about employment differently. You've got to think about healthcare differently. You've got to think about housing differently, shared housing, and we need to fight for affordable housing. As Wendy said, every time something falls off, it's going to have an impact in this community. So as senior housing, those units that were kept aside, we lose them. More stuff is happening. So anyway, with that said, I don't want to talk too much. I think this speaks for itself, but I'm going to go back once again and say that we need to continue, as Diana said about cost savings, we need to look at maximizing our energies and our dollars, and we need to do that through the collective. So I just want to say a thank you. We got to work on this together. And I just want to say the other thing, I'm sorry, everyone knows I'm going to say, I always say I'm going to shut up and never do. But I also want to think since 2018, if you look at those increases since 2018, in 2018, 20 beds at the Lewis Center were guaranteed to youth 18 to 24. And my imagination, had that not been the case, these numbers would be much higher. So please keep in mind, this is not an accurate reflection. Thank you for your time. I hope you have the best holiday season. Please be thankful. Remember, we have each other, and we as Palm Beach County as a collective can make a difference in our community. Amen.
Thank you, Kat. Really appreciate it. So we're going to go ahead and advance to the next slide, Kiana, and jump right into the city of West Palm Beach. We have Jennifer, who's here with us today. And, you know, we have 39 municipalities throughout.
Oh my God, James, I have to interrupt. I got a couple text messages saying, of course I forgot the county, because why would I forget the county? James, you and Wendy have been the best allies ever. Please remember that. And Megan Parnell, who's hidden somewhere, and let you know that rising letter, Kiana Pierre Lewis, we need to watch out for her. And now I'm going to shut up.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you very much. So we have 39 municipalities throughout this county, and there's not a municipality that's more engaged in homelessness than the city of West Palm Beach. They've actually increased their engagement tremendously. And so what we want to do is a couple of things. One, I'd like for Jennifer, if you would take a moment to just talk about this new app that the city launched, and the new structure that you guys have implemented with the city of West Palm Beach. And then if you would talk about the development. I know there was some development that was happening in the Curry Park area. We'd love to hear more about that and what the implications to homelessness will be throughout that development. So Jennifer.
Hi, James. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. James, you couldn't have said it any perfectly at the beginning of your presentation when you stated that homelessness is not just a county issue. So when I think about homelessness, of course, you know, the city of West Palm Beach, we are the county seat of Palm Beach County. We have one of the highest, if not the highest, homeless populations residing within our city. We have a vast majority of the service providers that are located within our city. So obviously, homelessness is a huge priority and a huge need in our community. So how could we not be one of the leaders to step up and partner with the county, with the other local service agencies to address this issue? So that's naturally something that we're going to do and that we're going to address. And how we've done that throughout the years, I mean, it's been on the preventative side, of course, providing affordable housing or workforce housing. Currently, we have I want to say around 400 units of affordable housing that are either in the pipeline or that are being developed. Obviously, we tackle the homelessness issue on you know, with the current engagement, and how do we engage these individuals? How do we house them? How do we provide you know, services that they need? And one thing that, you know, we really haven't talked about is obviously the huge need for mental health services. And I'd love for us to further explore that or have more of a discussion on that, because we all know that being mentally and emotionally healthy promotes productivity. It promotes our ability to be effective in the workplace. It promotes our ability to be effective, at school or with our families or taking care of our children. So having a solid mental health is critical, and it's just as important as housing, because and then we keep narrowing down on housing, and yes, it's important, but what about mental health? So I'd like to at some point talk about that as well. But you did ask us about our new app, which it really came about because we get a lot of inquiries and emails that are sent, and just, one of the difficult things, and I'll backtrack a little bit, one of the difficult things that we as municipalities face is the fact that we have to protect the public interest of all individuals, including homeless individuals, of course. But we do get residents that are, maybe not as sensitive to, individuals that are homeless. So we get a lot of complaints and a lot of emails sent to the mayor and emails sent to different locations. So we thought of putting together an app that could help our residents report, hey, there's a homeless person that may need assistance, or, hey, I just experienced a congregation of homeless individuals. Can you guys come out and see what you can do to provide services? So in that way, they are able to do that on their phones. They're able to locate the location in which they were able to witness this scenario. They're able to identify, if they would like for us to follow up. And so in that way, and we also are keeping track of all of the different systems, all of the different calls and all of the different inquiries that we're receiving. So it's just one way and one tool to make it user friendly, and so that also we have accurate reporting data to provide. So that's as it relates to our homeless app, and it's been really effective. We're making some tweaks to it and some changes to it, but it's been really widely received by our residents and by members of the homeless community as well. What was the other question that you asked, James?
So if, Kiana, if you want to advance to the next slide, we know that you guys, the city has been doing a tremendous amount of development, which is truly awesome. I just wanted you to speak a little bit about the Curry Park, that area that you're developed, if you can, and just talk about what the implications would be around homelessness and any other innovative things that the city is doing to address homelessness, because we see what you're doing as a model for other municipalities, and we want them to engage with the same vigor.
Right. So as it relates to Curry Park and the development going on in the city, look, I wish that I had a magic wand that I could say, hey, we're going to, have these strategies and once we're going to solve the homeless issue. But obviously, I think we all have to come to the realization that in our lifetimes, homelessness is not going to go away, right? So with the new development that's coming into our city, I think one of the things that we are going to do is just to continue in our efforts and look at ways that, how can we be flexible with our strategies, because things do change, and how can we improve ourselves, right? Because a lot of times we look at, well, let's put more money to this specific issue, and maybe that's not it. Maybe we just need to look at ourselves and say, how do we improve our programs? How do we improve our service delivery? How do we improve our collaborations? How do we, because that's really where we talk about resources and how do we, look at our costs and reduce costs, and that's one way of doing that. So with obviously when there's new development that comes around, the way that I see this development is going to be great, obviously, for that neighborhood, but there will be issues with some residents where they may come across, homeless individuals, and again, there'll be those that are not as sensitive or that don't really understand. But all we can do is continue in our efforts and continue to do the best that we can to serve our community as a whole and our homeless individuals. And it's a balance. There is no magic wand. There is no magic one thing. It's a variety of different strategies and different things that we'll have to explore.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you for all of the work that you guys continue to do at the city of West Palm Beach. So what I'm going to do is ask if Kiana would just stop the PowerPoint presentation altogether. Not to have that slide, but just to have us just talking to each other and really to begin to explore COVID and its impact on homelessness. And we'll give everyone a couple of minutes to respond. I'm also going to invite our participants to join us in this discussion through the Q&A. So we'll have Wendy monitoring the Q&A button and really trying to provide a response to you. If you have feedback that you'd like to share with regards to gaps that you're seeing, certainly you can chime in there. If you have questions that you would like to ask any of the panelists, you can use the Q&A to ask those questions. So we'll just start back with you, Diana. When you think about COVID-19 and what you're seeing from your front and how it's impacting homelessness, what are you seeing and what gaps should we be considering as we prepare for our upcoming notice of funding opportunity?
You know, for us, it's always going to be about protecting those that are still out on the streets and really looking at ways that we can protect the most vulnerable individuals. You know, when it comes into the world of reentry, it was interesting. I read an article the other day about how arrests were down during COVID. And there was this interesting analogy that was happening that why is it that the arrests were down, especially in the homeless world? That's because there was fear about getting COVID. And yet it really didn't disrupt the safety of the community. And so I'm really hoping that COVID may make us pause and realize that homelessness is not a crime and people should not be arrested because of it, and that there's other alternatives besides incarceration. And so that's what we're hoping to see. And we're really grateful. We've got a really strong relationship with PBSO and we work very closely with all of the law enforcement. But I think that's going to be an important piece. And I think, James, for us, for COVID, and you've heard me say this, and I just share this with this group here, we know that when the nation starts to feel the pain of what the aftermath of COVID will be, we have people for the first time that will be experiencing homelessness, and they're going to be experiencing all poverty, and they're going to be on the brink of what do we do next. And we're going to be there to help them thanks to the CARES money. But what I'm most concerned about is when that happens, and if anybody was around, Wendy was around, Matt was around during the housing crisis, what happens during that point is the funnel then starts to be filled with new people. And the real issue are those that were already in the funnel, and they are totally muffled, and there's no resources left for them. And so for us at the Lord's Place, it's those real chronic homeless. It's going to be really easy to hopefully take care of those, and we're committed to that. But we need to remember that in the bottom of that funnel are the ones whose voices will not be heard, and we need to be really responsive to that. And when we talk about return on investment, it really has to be, we shouldn't be taking money away. We need to be pouring money in. We need to be enhancing our services, and we need to be thinking creatively on what that looks like. So Kat, I'm going to respond to Kat for a moment on COVID. I mean, on your seniors. You know, Lord's Place is going to break ground in the next couple months on a new housing program that's intergenerational based on this. So it's not only about how do we take care of the seniors, but how do we become really creative? And I think that's the call to action with COVID, James, is that we need to not keep doing business as usual, SOS, same old stuff, sweetheart, right? But we need to be very creative, and we need to take this time of reflection and move forward in a new way.
But on your point, Diana, I have to say, one of the things that I, you know, as a ex-New Yorker, what am I, text Florkin? I'm a very confused human being, which I accept. But one of the things I think that makes that possible, that we don't lose people in that shuffle, is coordinated entry and the prioritization of people with the highest need. And we've been doing that, and we've gotten better. We do it better nationally than most places. And we need to recognize that coordinated entry, yes, we will not be able to serve everyone. We always must serve the people with the highest need. And that includes seniors and people with vulnerabilities, but that's why it's more important than ever for us to emphasize coordinated entry.
And more important than ever for us to be raising some other money than just the CARES money, right?
And that homeless coalition and you and the homeless
coalition
into the box,
right? Yeah, we got to just think differently on that. So that's my call. Is I really hope that we use this time to really just not do same old stuff, folks. Let's think out of the box.
Well, you know, we'll have a chance for Wendy to kind of talk about some other pots of CARES dollars and how we're looking to continue some of the programs that we've started
Right.
here, and also look at some other innovative things that our homeless services system really needs. Matt, what's your perspective? What have you seen on the homeless front as it relates to COVID, and what have you seen any gaps that have been created that we should consider as we shape the strategic priorities for this upcoming NOFA?
I mean, I think I've been, I think with the CARES funding, like the homeless prevention efforts for Palm Beach County, I think in large part with Palm Beach County's, with the CARES Act funding, it's done a really good job of sort of staving off temporarily, at least, a huge deluge of evictions. When I hear those numbers in the back of my head, I think to myself, I'm surprised there aren't more with all of the unemployment that in our community. So I think short term, I really think homeless prevention is continuing. It's going to continue to be the biggest need that we see. But on our calls that we're getting, and I'm sure they're in line with everyone on the panel and all the service providers, but a lot of calls from folks that owe 3, 4, 5 months. We get calls from families who, are back to work, but they've lost hours. Some of their days have been cut. So it becomes sort of a complicated mess. And I just think about return on investment, with that amount of money and also the sort of the trauma on the kids. It's easier to keep them housed where they are than to enter this shelter system and move again. Another piece that we worry about on our campus is the impact on the child's education. That shutdown was very difficult, and I think statistically, vulnerable communities and populations. I think whether it's the digital divide, I think the school did an amazing job with the Chromebooks, making sure that connectivity is there and making sure that there are folks that can help kind of guide our kids. So like we did an outside classroom thing early on in the school year just to make sure all those kids were signing in. But I think a lot of us here just get worried that, if we do go back to a virtual setting exclusively, for safety reasons, good reasons, but what impact would that have on some of the kids and how do we not lose them?
Yeah, and that's certainly something that I know the Birth to 22 Gaps Committee has been focusing on, is how do we support kids who in the digital divide that we're experiencing. We know that our system, unfortunately, is set up so that those who are marginalized are going to be impacted the most, and that's that equity work that we have to continue to do. But, even with the families who are not accustomed to supporting kids at home and the challenges that they're experiencing with, like you said, the lack of equipment, the lack of the ability to get the education that they need, kids who are already behind being further behind. That's absolutely something that we need to be looking at. And I know that the county is working very closely with the school district, particularly around CARES dollars and how we can ensure that every penny is spent, especially looking at what the needs of the district are and how we can continue to support them. So I just want people to know that that is something that we're doing. There's an infrastructure committee that's looking at the deserts when it comes to internet connection, and we're working, the ISS department and the school district, they're working hand in hand to make sure that low-income communities have access to internet. And there are a number of entities that are out there providing other resources to support families. And we want to be strategic in this approach moving forward. So thank you for that feedback. It's certainly something that that we need to keep our eyes on as we continue to deal with this post-pandemic. Before I get to some other opinions, I do want to give a shout out. I heard in previous presentation, I think Kat gave a shout out to the Housing Authority. I want to give a shout out to the Housing Authority. It has just been tremendous working with Palm Beach County Housing Authority. And Carol, I know you're on the call. You and your team, it's been a pleasure working with with you and collaborating with you. And I mean, it's the best that I've ever seen since, in the decade that I've been here. And, you guys are such an important partner in this work. And we really just thank you and your team for your continued collaboration. I also
Absolutely. I'm not supposed to interrupt. I get told that all the time, but we got to do an amen, brother.
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to Career Source. I know Julia is on the call as well. And, dealing with this pandemic has just been crazy. And we just saw the recent unemployment numbers or claims rise nationally, and know that we've been doing a lot to bring that number down here locally. But it's really been nice to have a partner like Julia who's there to be responsive to the needs of the community. And so thank you for your continued work. And I also saw the Homeless Coalition CEO. We have a new CEO for the Homeless Coalition, Pamela Payne, who was with us today. And we're really excited about the work. I'm hoping that the webinar presentation today will help to give you an even better view and understanding of homelessness and what our challenges are, so you can go out and get that money and bring it home so that we can continue to move forward in achieving the goals on our homeless plan. I know there are other partners that are on the call, but I just want to make sure that I say thank you and for those partners that are joining and the others as well. So Jennifer, I'm going to go back to you, and I want to hear from you in terms of homelessness and the COVID-19 crisis. What are you seeing out there, and what are some things that we need to consider as we move forward in shaping the NOFO in 2021?
So I don't want to echo what my other colleagues have stated, but I think one of the things that I've noticed with COVID, and with any time there's a sort of, a big issue, I really see people coming together and really caring for each other, and really seeing not just people, but also organizations or strategies. One great thing that I can think of, James, is how we've been able to work together on streamlining the rental assistance programs and the food assistance programs, and how we have been assisting the county with processing those applications and assisting our residents with applying. So if there was a way that we can try to streamline that process for how people receive assistance, that aspect is crucial. Just to kind of explain to everyone, the reason why we went that route was because we realized that as an end user, I try to think, if I was not in government, or if I did not work in the city of West Palm Beach, well, I would know that all of these resources are available, especially knowing that the county has a program, the city has a program, all these different nonprofits have a program. So how am I going to be knowing all of these things and all these different systems and all these ways to apply and all these different rules? It's difficult for an end user. It's difficult for an individual who really needs the assistance to actually, go and receive it. So when we craft this document, or when we draft, the NOFO, or looking at ways that we can streamline the delivery of the services and the needs that we're going to put out there, in essence. And I think that's a huge thing to focus on, especially if we want to serve our residents and if we want to expend the dollars that we need to spend.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's hear from Uwe. Uwe, you have any thoughts you want to share on gaps created due to COVID that we should consider?
Yes, of course I do. I want to quickly, before I just forget it, because you just said it, Jennifer, I think we made already big progress in communication. If someone is in need, with the new hotline call center, what was established here within the Lewis Center, it is a system, and I have tried it myself. I don't just listen to people and believe what I'm being told. I tried it. The system is working. We may have to think about how we can make it a little more user-friendly. The problem is with homeless people and people in need, they don't have a patience to listen to minutes of announcement and waiting for which extension does now apply to them and where they do good help. The bottom line is, however, they will get help as long as they listen and wait for the instructions and follow these instructions to the dot, then they will get help. And I've tried it several times. It really works. And at the end of the day, You always talk to a human being. So progress has been made in that regard. Like I said, it can still be improved. And any way to make it as easy as possible is obviously welcome. And I think we continue to keep working on that together with the systems people and within our Homeless and Housing Alliance. Coming back to the Corona thing, I'm usually an optimist, and however, I am a little concerned with Corona, and what we talked about here just the last minutes in this around here is what's going to happen when it's all over. And I think, do we really know yet what's going to happen? I think we are all going to be in for a big surprise. I don't think we have seen the final numbers of unemployment yet. And as a small episode, I can tell you, not everybody is already unemployed, but a lot of people are out there hanging on the last thread on their job with their employees. I know I have some volunteers here that are telling me they are being laid off every week, one day less, another week, another day less. And it's just a question once they're going to get the final termination. So I don't think we have seen the end of it yet, as we have not seen the end of COVID to begin with. So we don't know what's coming in that regard. We don't know how the moratorium is going to work out. I am a little more hopeful on that the people who are in charge of making the decisions on that, all the way in Washington, that they make the right decision and that we have enough time to bridge it over to that point where people look at it a little more favorable when it needs to be looked, when it's probably being looked at right now. So we will see that. But overall, I also want to thank our community. I'm doing this now for 7 years, and I haven't gone through a crisis like my colleagues here on the panel who have been involved with this for a longer time than I was. You guys were around through the 2008 crisis, the housing crisis, and all that stuff. I haven't seen anything like that, but I always was told, and I've learned, living here in America, I've learned when we go through a big problem and a big issue that concerns the whole nation, the nation comes together, the communities come together, and Americans come together and help. And I think we have seen that, especially here, when you talk to me, I always wear two hats. I'm not just the chair of the Homeless and Housing Alliance, I'm also an employee of the Homeless Coalition. And where James mentioned it briefly, where I'm in charge of the donation center. And when COVID hit, I was worried when we shut down. I was worried, oh my God, we're going to lose all the donors and no more in-kind donations going to come in. Well, I was in for a big surprise. There was more donations during the COVID time and post our reopening than I would have dreamed of. It is the problem we are having is volunteers, but donations itself came in. People come together. Now, granted, people had a lot of time. They cleaned out their closets and all that stuff. But it's also, I see that the community is willing to help. Nothing has slowed down. Around these holidays, I run the feeding program here for the Lewis Center and for the Annex, the Breaking Bread program. And I tell you, around the holidays, we always get busy and we get many phone calls. People want to do something good to the end of the year, at the end of the year and for the holidays. And they remember the homeless people. And I tell you, I don't see a slowdown this year. I get as many calls, and we are doing as well with the program as we can and was expected. So I want to thank you, the community. I can see a lot in the community where there is a willingness to help the the programs in place. And then everybody wants to pitch in a little bit. It needs to be funneled into right directions, and we need to maximize it. And that can be done with advocacy, explaining to people what's going on. It's very important. I've learned that in my job here. A lot of people don't know about the problems of homelessness or the problem of homelessness in general. They are not aware that it exists and to what extent it exists. And people are also not aware how easy it is to become homeless. Like James brought up a couple of things. A fire. I had the other day an old gentleman walking in here to the donation center. He said, "Can you help me out?" And we usually don't do that everybody can walk in here and we help them out. You got to be with some service provider and so on. So he told me his story. His house burned down over the weekend and he needed some clothes. He had lost everything. And so I helped him out. But that's how fast it goes, how fast he became overnight homeless and doesn't know how to deal with it and needs help. So I think if we all come together and explain that to our community, and it takes us all, if we all together, it takes a village, right? And I repeat this here, it takes the whole community and it takes everybody, the businesses, the individuals, the faith-based community, the educational entities, everybody has to pitch in and together we can make this work. We have seen over the last couple of years how we help the homeless youth group. I was just recently, I found out we are doing tremendous progress with the veterans. We have made tremendous progress, even during the Corona crisis, still working on it. And they have come a long way. We may be able to have a surprise announcement on that towards the end of the year. We may be at the practical zero at this point right now.
Yeah, I like that. And Uwe,
with the veterans. So I think if we keep doing what we are doing, we are doing the right thing. And I know the Homeless and Housing Alliance, we have addressed already, and we have asked our members to think about the senior citizens who are becoming homeless, to think about the aftermath of COVID, what's going to happen and how we're going to address it. So I think we are ready and we will do what we can to make it happen. And I am confident that we have the right community to make it happen and we have the right resources to make it happen. All these people here on this panel, we all work on it very hard. The 60 members of the Homeless and Housing Alliance, they work on it. The county, the municipalities, everybody is involved and doing their best. I like to see what I see from the city of West Palm Beach. The current mayor, ever since he is in office, he has a weekly newsletter, and there's not 1 week going by that there is not a little paragraph, at least at a minimum, about the problem of the homelessness and how it's being addressed in the city. So I see a lot of positive things, and I would like that to keep it going, and everybody has to pitch in that we make sure it continues this way.
and we have a couple of questions that are in the chat that I want to get to before I have Wendy give some final thoughts about moving forward. One of the questions about women who have been displaced due to domestic violence situations, and it has escalated since COVID began, and we continue to rely on our victim services and our domestic violence partners like AVA and the YWCA and some others to provide those much needed shelter services and housing services for that population. I see a question here about how people are chosen for the homeless center, and they go through, I think Wendy or someone mentioned it earlier, there's an assessment they go through. Diana talked about acuity, so we have to look at chronicity, and then we take that from a coordinated approach and determine who is prioritized for shelter. And then there are a number of different housing options for them, whether it's permanent supportive, rapid rehousing, whether they may just need first and last, or even on the prevention side to address homelessness. We will send the Leading the Way Home report to everyone who is on this panel today. So you'll actually get the document so that you can read through it. It's much more comprehensive.
James?
Yes.
I just wanted to add to everyone who's participating on this. I just put my email in the chat, and one of the things I'm happy to have anyone see a tour of the Lewis Center, talk about coordinated entry as in my role as the HHA executive team member. I'm on the executive committee. So in that role, I'm happy to sit down and talk to any person who wants to learn about it. Just email me and come visit and we will make it happen.
Thank you, Kat. So I'm gonna let Wendy kind of take us home. I do see that there are some other questions in here about housing vouchers and things, which is not necessarily our expertise. But what we're going to do is take all of these questions and we're going to send out a response to those of you who are asking, so that we can ensure that you get the answer to your question. So Wendy, I'll let you just talk about our future moving forward. We're going to be a few minutes over, so hopefully you guys will bear with us. But Wendy, take us home.
First and foremost, thank you all for joining today. Thank you to the panelists who presented excellent information. What the panelists have said is very true. It takes a village, and it's going to take a village, a community, 39 municipalities, and everybody to end homelessness in our community. We are planning for what COVID is going to bring after the moratorium. We all are on the fence about what that means and what that looks like. But I know that, I've been in this community a very long time and doing this a very long time, that together we do make a difference. Look at how much we've done in 3 years. Who'd ever thought we'd had the housing authorities at the table? Who'd have thought that Diana's breaking ground on a senior facility? Matt bought up an entire block for housing. And it just keeps going. I never thought we'd see a facility in the Glades either. So we have a lot of things to be proud of, a lot of things to celebrate, but we have a lot of work ahead of us as well. And we are on our way. Collaboration is the only way to do it. And we do that fairly well. So blessings to all of you. Thank you for all you do, and get ready to roll up your sleeves as we've already done. Our COVID numbers are on the way up. We don't really know what that means as a community or as a nation.
Can I take a moment, if I can, real quick, James, and just do a big shout out to Wendy, because I do think that Wendy, I do think you're the unsung heroine in that group there. So you do all this work nonstop, and really, James, I think we are where we are today because of your vision and your leadership. So really, on behalf of the Lord's Place, and I know all of us here, your endless hours and tireless hours have made us where we are today. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. And thank all of you guys for joining us today. Wendy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I see there's some more questions. Is kind of what has caught my eye. But really, thank you to the participants who logged on and stayed with us for 2 hours while we talked about this subject. I think it needs to happen more often. And again, we need help with the point in time count, because we don't know what that's going to look like. I've already received some emails, so thank you so much. I'm going to drop James, can you drop my email address into the,
yes,
I can't seem to respond to the participants.
Okay, I'll drop the email, and I'll also send it out, because we're going to send the link to Leading the Way Home to everyone that signed up. So you guys will get an email from us shortly on this information, and ways that you can connect. If you go to thehomelessplan.org, you can go to the Engage Us button. There are a list of different options on how you can connect with us around homelessness. And there's a space where you can say other. These are things that I want to do in order to engage in this work. So we part of what we want to do, and part of the Leading the Way Home plan, is to expand our support services and our collaboration efforts. And this is just one of the ways that we're doing that. So I'll make sure that they get all of your contact information.
Awesome. And really, guys, thank you again for all you do, all on the call. If you're not a member of the Homeless and Housing Alliance, please join us. Happens on the third Thursday of the month. We'd love to have you. If you're interested, you can drop me an email, drop any one of these people on the call an email. They know about it. I wish each one of you a good Thanksgiving. Please stay safe. And remember, wear your mask.
All right. And thank you, Jody, Megan. Thank you, Taruna, for all of your help, and to all of the department employees that are working vigorously to make it happen during this crisis. So thank you so very much. All right.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, James, for your leadership too. Thank you. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Be blessed.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.